Srimad Bhagawatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 We're reading from Srimad Bhagawatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, Verse 15. Further inquiries by Vidura. Vidura Uvacha. Sanchina. Samshayo. Mayam. Samchina Samshayo Mayam. Tava. Suktasina. Vibo. Dava Suktasina Vibo. Uvayatrapi. Bhagavan. Upayatrapi Bhagavan. Mano. Me. Sampradhavati. Mano me Sampradhavati. Vidura Uvacha. Samchina Samshayo Mayam. Tavasu Dasino Vipu. Upayatrapi Bhagavan. Mano me Sampradhavati. Samprati.
Mano me sampradavati.
Vidura Uvacha.
Vidura vacha.
Samchina Samshayo Mayam.
Sanchina samshayo maya.
Tavasukta Sina Vibo.
Navadvip sina vivo.
Uvayatrapi Bhagavan.
Uvayatrapi Bhagavan.
Manome Sampadavati.
Manome sampradavati.
Chant.
Viduruvacha
Vidura vacha.
Samchinna Samshayo Madhyam
Sanchina samshayo maya.
Savasukta Sina Vipo
Tavasukta sina vivo.
Upayatrapi Bhagavan
Uvayatrapi Bhagavan.
No me sampradhavati
Manome sampradavati. Vidura uvacha.
Vidura uvacha.
Sanchina samshayo maya.
Samchina Samshayo Mayam.
Tavasukta sina vivo.
Tavasukta sina vivo.
Uvayatrapi Bhagavan.
Uvayatrapi Bhagavan.
Maname sampradavati.
Manome Samprabhavati.
Vidura vacha.
Vidura uvacha.
Sanchina samshayo mayam.
Sanchina samshayo maya.
Avashukta sina vivo.
Navasutta sina vivo.
Upayatrapi Bhagavan.
Upayatrapi Bhagavan.
Manose sampradavati.
Maname sampradavati.
Viduruvacha
Vidura uvacha.
Sanchina Samshayo Mayam
Sanchina samshayo maya.
Tavasukta Sina Vivo
Tavasutta sina vivo.
Upayatrapi Bhagavan
Upayatrapi Bhagavan.
Manome Sampradavati
Manome sampradavati.
Vidura Uvacha.
Vidura vacha.
Vidura said.
Vidura said.
Samchina.
Sanchina.
Cut off.
Cut off.
Samshaya.
Samshaya.
Doubts.
Doubts.
Mayam.
Mayam.
Unto me.
Unto me.
Tava.
Tava.
Your.
Yours.
Sukta Asina.
Suktasina.
By the weapon of convincing words.
By the weapon of convincing words.
Vibo.
Vivo.
Oh my Lord.
Oh my Lord.
Uvayatrapi.
Uvayatrapi.
Both in God and in the living entity.
Both in God and in the living entity.
Bhagavan.
Bhagavan.
Oh powerful one.
Oh powerful one.
Mana.
Mana.
Mine.
Mine.
Me.
Me.
Mine.
Mine.
Samadavati.
Sampradavati.
Perfectly entering.
Perfectly entering.
Translation. Vidura said, Oh, powerful sage, my Lord, all my doubts about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and living entities have now been removed by your convincing words. My mind is now perfectly entering into them. Repeat. Vidura said,
Vidura said,
O powerful sage, my Lord,
O powerful sage, my Lord,
all my doubts
all my doubts
about the Supreme Personality of Godhead
about the Supreme Personality of Godhead
and the living entities
and the living entities
have now been removed
have now been removed
by your convincing words.
by your convincing words.
My mind
My mind
is now perfectly entering into them.
is now perfectly entering into them.
Purport. The science of Krishna, or the science of God and living entities, is so subtle that even a personality like Vidura has to consult persons like the sage Maitreya. Doubts about the eternal relationship of the Lord and living entity are created by mental speculators in different ways, but the conclusive fact is that the relationship of God and living entity is one of predominator and the predominated. The Lord is eternal predominator, and living entities are eternally predominated. Real knowledge of this relationship entails reviving the lost consciousness to this standard, and the process for such revival is devotional service to the Lord. By clearly understanding from authorities like the sage Maitreya one can become situated in real knowledge, and the disturbed mind can thus be fixed on progressive path. Mukam karati vachalam pankalam tedim yakipantamam vande shivruntam Om Gyanati Marandasya Gyananchara Sharakaya Chakshumiritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So just now when I was reading this verse, actually the purport, where Prabhupada says that, how subtle is the science of Krishna, that even Vidura has to consult. Vidura was, brother of Vyasadeva. He was a pure devotee. He was a preacher. He was in Krishna Lila. But even he had to consult. And so that reminded me of Maharaj Parikshit at the time of his death. He knew perfectly what to do. He knew what to do, but he consulted the sages. He consulted Shukdev. And he was a Mahabhagavat. So even even if you're a Mahabhagavat, you still have to consult the authorities.
Is the mic on? Is the mic on?
I don't think so.
It's
Hare
on
Krishna,
here.
Hare Krishna.
Is it on here?
It is
on
on,
here?
but it's not working. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
A little louder.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram. So here, Hare Krishna, that's
Yes.
better. Now it's working.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Right. So the word that struck me in this verse was samshaya, or doubts. Doubts. Doubt is here used in a negative sense. Doubts about the Supreme Lord and living entities are not good. And the mental speculators are making such doubts. And even our mind can be a mental speculator and create such doubts, our own mind. We can also be mental speculators. So these kind of doubts about the Lord and living entities, these are not good doubts. Also in Bhagavad Gita, in the 7th chapter, it's described Maya Saktamana Pardam, and then Asamshaya Samagramam, that free from doubts. And the verse is, Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Hear, O son of Prita, how, by practicing yoga and full consciousness of me with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubts. So the purport says, Prabhupada says, same thing, by devotion service, you can know the Lord, free from doubts. So we're following the path of devotional service from Shraddha to Prema. And on this path, there comes a point where we may have some doubts. And that time, there's a name for it, anartha nivritti. The doubts come up. And sometimes we might get confused and we may think, well, maybe I'm in the wrong process. Our doubts come up and we think, well, maybe I made a mistake here. And there's 4 causes that may cause us to fall away. And one of them is doubt or ignorance. It's ignorance about the path, devotional service, that may cause us to fall away. His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said there's 4 causes. He analyzed 4 causes of fall down. One is that ignorance of the path, and one is aparad, or offenses. Another is pride, lack of humility, and another is lack of good association. If we're too by ourselves, too isolated, we may fall down. These could be causes of leaving devotional service. So ignorance of the path means that we may not know that, the time may come when we have doubts. We may join and be very enthusiastic and go through many years, and then all of a sudden we might get some doubts after some years. So so we need to get those doubts cleared by hearing and chanting attentively, by hearing from the authorities, asking questions, reading the books. Even in other paths and other faiths, these doubts come. I remember I was in Calcutta when Mother Teresa left her body, and she was considered a great saint by a lot of the Indians, and thousands came to her funeral. And then an article came in, I think Newsweek magazine, one of those American magazines, where one of the journalists had discovered her diary, her personal diary, or somehow it got leaked. And in the diary, she was having some doubts. And they said, just see, she's not a saint. But actually, it happens. It happens. And she went to her superior with her doubts, and they were resolved. So even Mother Teresa had doubts, so what to speak of us. But doubt may also be a good. It may be a sign of intelligence. So how is doubt good? That is described in the third canto here, later on in chapter 26, in verse 30, where it says, Samshaya viparyasa nishchaya smritir evacha. And these are the characteristics of intelligence. Doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep, as determined by their different functions, are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. Oh, doubt is a function of intelligence. And Prabhupada says, doubt is one of the important functions of intelligence. Blind acceptance of something does not give evidence of intelligence. Therefore, the word samshaya is very important. In order to cultivate intelligence, one should be doubtful in the beginning. But doubting is not very favorable when information is received from the proper source. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, doubting the words of the authority is the cause of destruction. Described in Patanjali Yoga system, by intelligence only one can understand things as they are. By intelligence only one can understand whether or not he is the body. The study to determine whether one's identity is spiritual or material begins in doubt. When one is able to analyze his actual position, the false identification with the body is detected. So we're hearing a lot about misidentification in these last verses. So this is viparyasa. When false identification is detected, then real identification can be understood. Real understanding is described as nishchaya, or proved experimental knowledge. This experimental knowledge can be achieved when one has understood the false knowledge. By experimental or proved knowledge, one can understand he's not the body, but spirit soul. So that's a good doubt. And it's good, because I went to many gurus before I met the devotees. And so after I met the devotees, I started doubting all those other ones. So that was a good doubt. That was good. And then I did have faith in Krishna consciousness. So in Mahabharata, Yudhishthira Maharaj was asked the question, who is our best friend? And he answered, intelligence. That's our best friend, our intelligence. So again, in the third canto, 26th chapter, there's 3 divisions of intelligence: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. So the soul goes through these, but the super soul perceives. So super soul is a predominator. So we're the predominated. So we go through these different levels of intelligence in different ways. Super soul knows everything that's happening, and he just watches what we're doing. So then, again, in the verse it says, by transformation of false ego and passion, intelligence takes birth. The function of intelligence functions are to help in ascertaining the nature of objects when they come into view and to help the senses. So Prabhupada says, intelligence is the discriminating power to understand an object, and it helps the senses make choices. Therefore, intelligence is supposed to be master of the senses. Perfection of his intelligence is attained when one becomes fixed in the activities of Krishna consciousness. So this is the proper use of intelligence. We can use our intelligence properly or improperly. That's our choice. Now, so where does intelligence come from? According to second canto, it's coming from super soul. It's coming from super soul. That's where our intelligence is coming from. So Srila Prabhupada describes how super soul is watching over us, is predominating. He gives an example of someone taking a dog for a walk. So the dog is allowed to do whatever he likes, the master waits. The real business of the dog is to obey the master's order, but the master gives the dog facility. You can walk, you can run, you can pass through here, and I'll wait for you. And then I'll take you home. And so Super Soul is like that. He's watching us, walking, talking, running, eating, everything, but he's just waiting for us to turn to him. And and what does he ask? In Bhagavad Gita, just give me a little leaf of fruit, flower, water, and I will accept that. So, Patram Vishpam Kuntoyam, Yome Vakya Vajti, Of course, he's looking for the bhaktya, for the devotion, not the leaf, flower, fruit, and water. And he's just waiting to take us back to home, back to Godhead. And so he's coming also. Externally he came as Krishna 5,000 years ago, or Chaitanya 500 years ago. And he, as Krishna, he said, give up all this nonsense. Prabhupada translates that verse, Sarvadharma Parityajya. Why are you suffering here? Give up all these engagements. Because you will just create engagements and suffer. That's all. You can't be free to do anything. We are the predominated. So Krishna says, don't bother manufacturing your ways of thinking. Sarvadharma Parityajya. The Prabhupada translate that verse in different ways. So how does Super Soul make you forget? Because it says in Gita, from Super Soul comes remembrance and forgetfulness. So Prabhupada gives another wonderful example. The Super Soul is like an expert director in a play. An expert director makes the actor forget his real identity to become the part he's playing. The Super Soul makes us forget who we are so we can play the part of American, Indian, whatever, male, female. We have to play our parts in this world. And the more we forget, the more we play nicely in this world. So Super Soul makes us forget our identity to become these different designations, these different bodies. We want to enjoy, unless we forget completely, I'm not this body, then we can't enjoy. And sometimes devotees have a problem when they leave, that they can't forget Krishna consciousness, although they try very hard. Some of our Gurukulis too, they try very hard to forget. But they can't. My son has been trying very hard, but sometimes he starts driving in the car, he starts singing a bhajan. You know, where did that come from? Because he went to Gurukul for 8 years. So yeah, it's hard to forget. Really hard to forget. But Super Soul helps us. But his advice is don't be entangled. Don't get entangled again. Try to surrender to me. And so in the 4th canto, 24th chapter, it's described that the Lord causes the demons to forget him and the devotees to remember him. So if you want to remember him, then you have to be a devotee. And if you want to forget, you can forget birth after birth. But if you remember him by association of devotee, then you can go back to home, back to God. Again, in 4th canto, 30th chapter, it says, whatever a living entity desires, however insignificant he may be, is noted by the Lord, who gives him a chance to fulfill his desires. So this is for even the non-devotees. He's doing this. Gita says in the 9th chapter that, I don't discriminate. I fulfill everyone's desires. Samoham, sarvabhuteshu. Namedvesho stinapriya. But if one is a devotee, he is my friend, and he's in me. And so, if we have a desire to serve Krishna, then nothing can stop us. Nothing can stop us from fulfilling that desire. So sometimes we can't do some service, but if we just have the desire to do it, then that's good enough. Just keep that desire strong. So if we serve the deities, if we serve the devotees, if we serve in the temple, we have some desire to do some service for Krishna, then it must be fulfilled. And another point is that with intelligence, we can understand the Lord. We have to use our intelligence to try and understand Krishna. Again, from the purport of the 2nd chapter of Gita, last verse, that Prabhupada says we can be Krishna conscious in a second. It's just a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Now, the mental speculators, which we heard about in this purport, Prabhupada says, can reach the point of Buddha Yoga after many, many lifetimes of speculation. Bahanam Javanamante. So many lives they have to speculate. But the intelligent person who begins with the platform of intelligence above the mind makes rapid progress. So this process, another name for Bhakti Yoga, is Buddhi Yoga, Yoga of intelligence. We're practicing an intelligence process, a yoga of intelligence, Buddha yoga. We hear about that in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And we don't lose anything, we don't lose it at the time of death. So in the purport in Gita, in second chapter, verse 39, Prabhupada says, the Buddha yoga is clearly explained in Gita 10:10 as being direct communion with the Lord who is sitting as Paramatma in everyone's heart. But such communion does not take place without devotional service. So, Bhajatam Priti Purvakam. So when we come to the level of Buddha yoga, actual Buddha yoga, then the Lord will talk to us. We heard, I think a few days ago, that Krishna will talk to us if we use our intelligence properly. And another meaning of Buddha yoga, intelligent persons will take to it immediately. They don't want to wait many, many births. Like sometimes you tell, if you preach in India, they'll say, yeah, when I'm old, I'll do this. When I get old, when you get old, what can you do? You can't, if your senses are finished, your body is finished, there's some ache, you just go to the doctor and, whatever. You can't do anything. So you wait till you're old, it's too late. Although we do get some people who join when they're older, but I think one devotee in Russia, she joined when she was in her 70s. And she was very advanced devotee. She would go on book distribution in India. And they weren't so careful about taking care of her. Sometimes she would get lost from the party because they would go ahead and she would just still be distributing. And somehow she'd find the devotees, someone would get her there. Not so good to wait till you're old. But most of us, I think, I was 22, that was borderline old age in those days when I joined. I mean, my husband was old, 25. That was, 16, 17, 18, that was more, below 20 was the norm. At least in the temple in Boston where I joined was, 22. Okay, well, you can't do too much at 22. But, they still gave me a lot to do. I mean, 10 hours of Harinam and 4 hours typesetting on the computer for the press. So, at least I got 4 hours of sleep. So, And so Krishna is waiting for us. He's in our heart. And Prabhupada, in one lecture, said if you want to understand by your intelligence, it's not so easy. You have to please him by your service, actually. So we have to use our intelligence to do service. And then he'll reveal himself. And Prabhupada says when Krishna comes to us, he'll say, here I am, what do you want? Yes. What will we do if Krishna comes and says, what do you want? What will we say? Anyway, so one time some devotees went to Prabhupada with a question, wrong question. And he said to Prabhupada, there is one common philosophy held by a lot of religious groups, that God can be understood directly from within, and no guru is necessary. So what was Prabhupada's answer? He's a rascal, and one who accepts him is a rascal. Why do you think God is speaking to him? So he just calmed the devotee. Why do you accept that? How come you're thinking like that? And you ask the question, and that means you have a doubt. So, who is God speaking to? Then he quoted, Tesham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam, one who is engaged in devotional service. He's already devotee engaged in his service. He talks with them, not a third-class fool. One who is 24 hours engaged. God talks with him. So that's described in the Bhagavatam, that the super soul is ever fresh. And he gives more and more realization every day. If you see, I wish I did. In the heart of the devotee, he reveals himself as ever fresh. In the Krishna book, in chapter 80, it describes this vision of a devotee. He sees super soul everywhere. And Prabhupada says, if one can simply think Krishna as Paramatma is everywhere, even in the atom, then one can perfect his thinking, feeling, and willing functions of the mind. So if you want to perfect his thinking, feeling, and willing functions, you need to see super soul everywhere. So here is a quite interesting question when Chutananda asked Prabhupada, because sometimes we get very enthusiastic like Barijan one time, he said to Prabhupada, you know, I think it's good if I stay here and help you birth after birth. And Prabhupada said, don't make me come back for your birth after birth. Now Chitananda asked the same question, got a whole different answer. Which is more important, to go back to Godhead or to stay here and spread Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada's answer was very interesting. He said, one who is preaching Krishna consciousness is already back to Godhead. Preacher means he's engaged body, mind, and words to glorify the Lord. He's Jivan Mukta. He's liberated even in this life. He's with Krishna. Krishna is talking with him. Buddhi Yogam Dadami. So I think sometimes the book distributors, they get some, the words are not their own words, they say, and it's coming. It's coming from Krishna, what to say to this person. How you can meet so many different people. So how to get intelligence, that's the question. When we follow the instructions of spiritual master, and here's again the purport, it's from 3rd canto in the beginning. If a disciple is very serious to execute the mission of the spiritual master, he immediately associates with the Supreme Lord by Vani or Vaku. This is the only secret of success in seeing the personality of Godhead. So we want to be serious to execute the mission. Instead of being eager to see the Lord in some bush of Vrindavan, while at the same time engaging in sense gratification, if one instead sticks to the principle of following the words of the spiritual master, he will see the Supreme Lord without difficulty. So this is real intelligence. And what happens when you, what does it mean to be on the level of intelligence? And in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada said that, the awakening of divine consciousness enthralls a devotee. And then he said, pure devotees, they always like to talk about Krishna. And they are merged in knowledge of Krishna. We heard about merging the other day. He said, Prabhupada says, such pure devotees always merged in knowledge of Krishna, absorbed in Krishna consciousness, exchange thoughts and realizations, just like great scientists exchange their views and discuss their research in scientific academies. Yes. And so yes, there is exchange. There is a spiritual exchange. Facebook also has a mental speculator exchange. They ask you what's on your mind, and everyone tells what's on their mind, and you exchange what's on your mental speculator exchange. Facebook. But no, ours is different. Our exchange is different. And the price, again, is volume, is eagerness, how to serve Krishna. So we may say, no, I'm very, very eager, I will do it, but it's not so easy, not so easy. So therefore, one thing we can do is we can pray. We can pray to the Super Soul. I have here 2 different prayers to Super Soul. One is from the child in the womb, and the other is from Srila Prabhupada, his personal prayer to Super Soul. So how does the child in the womb pray? My dear Lord, he's praying to Super Soul. By our causeless mercy, I'm awakened to consciousness, although I'm only 10 months old. For this causeless mercy of the Lord, there is no way to express my gratitude but to pray with folded hands. So again, Prabhupada says in the purport, intelligence and forgetfulness coming from Super Soul. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, so when does he give us remembrance? When he sees a conditioned soul is very serious about getting out of the clutches of material influence, then the Lord gives intelligence. So if we're very serious about going back to Godhead, Krishna will give us intelligence. And we have to express our gratitude for that. Thanks for giving me the intelligence to become a devotee and stay here for all these years and don't go away. So what's Prabhupada's prayer to Super Soul? He wrote in a letter to Devananda. Simply our prayer should be, my dear Krishna, please remind me to always chant your holy name. Please do not put me into forgetfulness. So he wants a reminder from Super Soul reminds us to do things. So you're sitting within me as Super Soul, so you can put me into forgetfulness or into remembering you. So please, do not put me into forgetfulness. Please always remind me to chant. Even you send me to hell, it doesn't matter, as long as I can always chant Hare Krishna. Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda are singing a very nice song in which they're requesting everyone to please chant Hare Krishna and come along with them. So that is our request to everyone. So again, Bhagavat, if you want to remember Krishna, you have to chant Hare Krishna. Gita, if you read the 8th chapter,
Jai Shri Panchatattva ki.
you read the 8th chapter about attaining the Supreme. Jai Panchatattva. Lord Jagannath Jai. So in the 8th chapter, in 17 purports, Prabhupada says if you want to remember Krishna, you have to chant Hare Krishna. And so many times he puts the whole mantra also in the purports, 17 times in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita purports. So yeah, how to remember is, and my experience is that by chanting you get intelligence. Because when I was teaching Bhaktivedanta course, I would have to teach Srimad Bhagavatam verses, and sometimes I wouldn't understand the verse. And so then I would read the verse and I would chant one round, and then I would get so much realization. And one time, I had a whole chapter I didn't understand, the one on time, all this time and that time. So I read the chapter, I chanted all my rounds, and afterwards, it was the day of class, I got a whole chart of this time and that time and how it is in earth, and I said, okay, thank you, Krishna. That happens if you chant attentively. So how to become empowered by Super Soul? One of my godbrothers wrote a letter. Well, Prabhupada wrote a letter to him. Why are my books not being printed in Germany? And the devotee said, I can't speak German, I can't translate them. Then I understood, oh, Prabhupada wants his books translated into German. I have to figure out how to do that. So I wrote him, what do I do? And Prabhupada said, chant Hare Krishna, and Krishna will give you intelligence. That was almost always the answer I got. Prabhupada wasn't the type of manager or leader who would give details, so he wasn't into micro management. He inspired you to use your creative intelligence. In fact, Prabhupada said there's a kind of individual genius in every living entity. When I looked up the word genius in the dictionary, the definition was indwelling deity. Isn't that interesting? Genius, indwelling deity. So, genius is Krishna, Lord in the heart. That's where we get our genius, that's where we get our intelligence from. And if we make ourselves receptive to the chanting, receptive to Krishna, accept Krishna, then genius tells how something should be done. So this particular devotee was a high school dropout. And after being a devotee for a few years, he lectured to the Harvard University faculty. After a few years, high school dropout. Can you imagine that? So yeah, I think we do have a few high school dropouts among our leaders. I know a few. But genius is there, and you get genius, and my experience, it's by chanting Hare Krishna. You can contact our intelligence, expand your intelligence. You feel you're not so intelligent, you can expand it by chanting attentively and listening to the mantra, and then you get a lot, you get everything. So I'll stop here. Any questions?
Oh, just one little comment. When the Harvard professor, if he hits his head on the pavement on the floor, he becomes a school janitor.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that.
If he does what?
If he hits his head on the floor, he becomes a school janitor.
I don't know.
That is intelligence. My great-grandfather invented the question mark. Think about that.
The question?
Question mark.
Who's your great-grandfather?
Yeah.
All right.
I have a question.
You have a
when
question.
people say like my intuition,
My
tells me
intuition.
this,
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
Paramatma or?
Yeah. Intuition is somewhere, Prabhupada said, in some purport somewhere, intuition.
In Hawaii,
Yeah, he said it here.
the entire month of May '72, Prabhupada spoke on the words intuition and...
For 1 month in Hawaii, in what year?
1972.
1972.
He was hammering, he was doing that process of hammering the post, remember, Maharaj?
Prabhupada was talking about
He was
intuition.
talking about
for 1
intuition,
month.
He was talking about instinct, those
Instinct.
two words.
Instinct and
He
intuition.
said the English language is defective because they cut Krishna out by using these
Yeah,
monotheistic words.
So, so I'm repeating it so everybody can hear on the line, on the internet, that Prabhupada said that they have invented these words, intuition and instinct, to cut out the super souls, actually souls. Thank you. That's really nice to know.
Yeah.
But also Super Soul tells us what we could comprehend in the moment, right? That's why
Yeah.
it's waiting for the dog to do this.
Yeah, he's
stuff.
he's giving intelligence. He's giving intelligence what to do. I mean, that voice is there.
How do we trust that intelligence? I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes-
how do you distinguish all the voices in your mind?
Yeah. Sometimes it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah. This is, so you have 3 ways to make sure that it's the right thing. It's called Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So if you're not sure, then you ask your Guru, you ask the sadhus, the devotees, and you go to the books. You have a question, open the book and see what the book says. Or ask somebody who knows the books and who can help you with that. So 3 ways you can make sure you're doing the right thing. That you're otherwise, there are so many voices. And I mean, and if you're really crazy, you hear more. And they label you as crazy. I don't know what it's called, borderline, I think, when you hear voices. I think it's called borderline. When you hear voices. Yeah. Huh? Schizophrenia, borderline. But Prabhupada in a lecture, he was telling that there was one court case where somebody murdered somebody, and the lawyer pleaded he was crazy. That's why he's crazy, so you have to excuse him. So they called in a psychologist to the court, and the judge asked the psychologist, so this guy's crazy? And he said, as far as I've understood, everyone is crazy. What I've observed. So everyone's, as Prabhupada observed, everyone is crazy. When I first joined, the first piece of literature I got is who is crazy? Who is crazy? Because everyone thought devotees were crazy, in sheets, on the dancing in the rain. And Prabhupada said everyone but the devotees is crazy. Yeah.
I was just curious about the wording of the translation, where he talks about how your words have, my doubts have been removed by convincing words, and my mind is now perfectly entering into them. I would think that the words would be entering into the mind. I mean,
Yeah, well, we can understand that we sing every day in Guru Puja. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. That means, actually, if you know the Bengali, it says, if you understand Bengali, it says, make your words one with my heart. Actually, Aikya is one. The last, Chitete Korya Aikya. Make your words one with my heart. Chitta. Make it one with my chitta. Korya Aikya. Ek. Make it ek. My chitta is only your words. That's all that's in my consciousness. Chitta means consciousness. So it means it's your default setting. It's the instructions of the spiritual master. That's where your mind goes. Vishuddha Maharaj, he practiced this. Before he would do anything, he would ask, is this Prabhupada's instruction? Like before he would eat, he would say, okay, Prabhupada said, fill your stomach half full with food, quarter full with liquid, and quarter full with air. Then he would eat. Before sleeping, okay, Prabhupada said sleep 6 hours. Sleep 6 hours. So he made his instructions one. That was an extreme example, but yeah, you get the idea. Make one with your heart. I mean, it's a different translation. And then it goes on, it's my only desire, Asha. It also says Asha there. Asha. I can't remember. Something at the end there is Asha. This is my desire. So yeah, that's intelligence. And you can always get more by chanting. If you don't think you have enough. That's because when you chant, you connect with Super Soul, with Krishna. If you really chant, and if you're attentive.